Okay, Ed Yardeni is president at Yardeni Research. He's joining us now, as always, to take some questions. Ed, good to have you back on the program. Thanks very much for your time. Prashant this side. Will the Fed be important on Wednesday with their decision and the commentary, Ed? Because markets have, it just gives you a sense markets perhaps have moved on. Interest rates have gone up 500 basis points, but stocks are flying high. The S&P is about 5% away from all-time highs. So what can the Fed do or say, in your opinion?
Well, I guess the market is saying there's not likely to be any surprises coming from the Fed. Everybody's expecting a 25 basis point hike up to 5.25 to 5.5% for the range on the Fed funds rate. And then the question is whether they'll go again. And everybody will be focusing on the commentary, as you mentioned, and the commentary that we'll get immediately after the meeting on Wednesday is from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. And he's likely to say that they might or might not move again, that they may very well be at a restrictive level, but he's not completely sure of it. So he's going to be very ambiguous. But I think the data is going to show that despite the economy's resilience, inflation is coming down, and that the Fed really has achieved what it wanted to, get to a level that is of the Fed funds rate that's high enough to bring inflation down.
Ed, how are you feeling about a market like India? Do you think the run that we've seen so far could take a bit of a pause? Because the earnings that we're getting are not as impressive as perhaps one would have expected, especially in spaces like technology. Do you think that could be a deterrent for the market? And what's the approach now?
I think it's important to put India in the context of the global economy. And the global economy isn't in a recession, but it's certainly not in a boom. We know that China's economic growth is turning out to be disappointing. We know that Europe didn't fall into a severe recession as a result of their energy crisis last year. But nonetheless, it has been in a modest recession in the fourth quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year. And we've seen the commodity prices haven't really moved up or down. We've seen that oil prices has moved sideways, copper has moved sideways. So I think India is kind of facing the same global situation as all of us are facing. It's not too hot and not too cold. It's somewhere in between, and maybe it's somewhat disappointing relative to expectations that things would be better.
Hi, Mr. Yardeni. Good morning. I'm looking at a Nomura note where they mentioned that Chairman Powell may not have more reason to be hawkish than what he's been in the past. Let's see how that goes. The verdict is split down the middle. We get one hike, and then let's see how it goes. But, the other focal point from an India perspective is what's going on with China. And there are some hopes there's going to be a stimulus package that's going to come out there, which could, reignite the Chinese economy. What's your view on that?
I think the Chinese government has a serious problem because they have been stimulating their economy for many years with ample supply of credit. It's created a real estate boom, and now that boom is turning into a bust. And it's not going to be very easy to just, with policies, make that problem go away. It's in many ways, it's a speculative bubble that has burst. And on top of all that, they have a horrible demographic situation. I have often been saying recently that China has become the world's largest nursing home. The demographic situation is pretty dire. It's a very rapidly aging population, and older people just, don't spend as much money. They certainly don't buy additional apartments. And so I think it's going to be hard for the Chinese government to come up with a policy that stimulates. The good news is China's weakness has translated into a falling PPI over there, and that in turn has an impact on the PPI in the United States and probably around the world. So I think China's problems are actually turning out to be a pretty good development for the U.S. in terms of allowing us to have disinflation, falling inflation without a recession, because China's got its domestic problems with a weak economy.
Okay, Ed, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining in, and hope to speak with you once we have the Fed decision and we hear from Fed Chair Powell later this week. That's on Wednesday. Well, it's time for our first quick commercial break here. A list of top stocks to watch lined up next. Stay with us. Our research team will be with us on the other side.